Good morning, world, and hello, YouTube. Oops, I fell down. Slinned here again with episode 2 of my world. So, in episode 1, I showed you guys the contents of my world. This is episode 2, so I guess the next logical progression is getting wood. And here we are in my tree farm to do just that. Well, actually, I have tons of wood, but I'm going to show you my tree farm. So, let's get started, I guess. I suppose we'll start by going out front. Oh, here we are. Got a feed drawer. Oh, I love you too. Yes, I do. I love you too. So, my tree farm from the front is kind of large and detailed. I'm not really sure what you would call it, but many people have called it a cathedral. So, I'll go ahead and call it a tree cathedral. It was never meant to be a cathedral, but it works. So I like that. There's the tree I just grew. Huh. It looks a little bit derpy, but that's how you chop down 2x2 trees to be most effective. You gotta chop them down as you stair up, and then you just chop them completely down as you go back down, which we didn't do, because I jumped off the side. But I can get rid of it just because, why not? 2x2 trees are pretty much the best way to gather wood, and of all the 2x2 trees, spruce has 0 branches, making it probably the most efficient way to gather wood for disposable wood. Anyways, I guess we're gonna get started with the functionality of the tree farm, since that's what most people are interested in, the redstone, the chambers, etc. And then I'll talk about the build style and what I was trying to accomplish here afterwards. There's another tree farm back there, so we'll get to that afterwards. That was built much later than this one was. It was added on after. It was an afterthought. Well, it was actually planned for a very long time, but not necessarily in the manner that it was actually done in. So, yes, the next step is I'm going to head inside, I'm going to talk about the redstone and the functionality, and then we'll talk about the build style, so be right back. Alright, so the idea is that when you plant 2x2 trees, they take up a great deal of space, they have a ton of leaves, and those leaves take a very long time to actually go ahead and despawn. That results in having to go back to the location where you chop down the trees repeatedly to pick up all the saplings that despawn from these leaves. I don't like doing that. I don't mind chopping down trees manually, but the issue is I always got like discouraged from having to go back and pick up the saplings just so I could replant the trees later. So my solution was, just plant the tree over a water pool, which is exactly what these chambers are. It's a line of water that starts along the back and flushes all the drops that land in this water down this way. Underneath the wall here, we have a drop down again, and this takes all the saplings and apples, occasionally apples, any logs that we miss while we're chopping them down as well. And brings them over here to some hoppers. We'll get to the redstone behind this in just a moment. First, let's finish the functionality though. So, part of doing this is making sure that the chambers are flush. We don't want any ledges, that's why there's glass blocks instead of glass panes. We don't want any ledges for the saplings or logs or anything else to get caught on. Big issue with stuff getting caught in these chambers is that we have to actually have a place to plant the tree, and that place has to be away from the wall. If we had a platform, okay, sure, it would only take a few of the saplings that we would have dropped here. It would only get the ones that landed precisely on the platform. But if we're going to go through the trouble of redstoning stuff and making it fancy, why not just make the platform retract? And as you can see, when the platform retracts, the water flushes right on top of it. Let's just go out on this side. The water flushes right on top of it, continuing to the drop down here and hitting those hoppers. So with the retractable platform, we are guaranteed 100% of the saplings get returned to us. So that's why the flat chambers or the flat walls, the retractable floor chamber, and the height, which is about 40 blocks tall, is because the maximum growth height of a tree, according to the wiki, and also according to my tests in a creative test world. Didn't bother counting blocks in survival. That's crazy. In a creative test world, was that the tree grows to about 32 blocks when you get a tall one, like the one we got it right there. So by making this about 40 blocks, it gave us ample space to fit our entire tree in here. You know, just plant the tree, loop flop, bone meal it, and boom. Look how tall that tree is. Wow. So that's the why of the chamber size. Well, the chamber height. The width and length, I guess, which they are just boxes, that was determined based off of jungle trees. Jungle trees of the wow. The 3 2x2 trees that you can grow in the game, which include dark oak, spruce, and jungle trees. Jungle trees are the ones that grow the widest. And that's because they're the only ones that actually have those branches up in the treetop there. So those branches cause leaves to spawn up to 7 blocks away from the tree. I believe these chambers have 5 blocks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so these chambers do not account for the full growth of a jungle tree horizontally. However, we are only talking about 3 or 4 leaves from a tree that will get cut off by our glass panes here. So it's not a big loss. It's not 100% efficient with jungle trees, but 4 or 5 leaves on a tree that can typically have over 200 leaves is not a big deal. So that's the dimensions right there for you. Let's go downstairs and look at the redstone. Well, before we go down, let me explain the item collection. So the items get flushed into those hoppers. Those hoppers lead it into an item elevator, and that item elevator empties out into this chest. So if I were to go out here and throw some saplings in, now this will work for anything that falls in, so if some logs fell into, we would get those back as well. All of those items will come here and join us in our chest as they are collected. So you can see our saplings, our bone meal, and our spruce wood logs have been returned. If we head downstairs, we have a little maintenance store here, and from under here we can actually see the redstone. Now a lot of this is not accessible, but I'll do my best to show you. So if we check under here, you can see these are our hoppers that are at the base of that water stream. You can see the water droplets coming through the ground there. So these are the lag spike. Every time I open a hopper for the first time after launching Minecraft, I get that lag spike, not sure why. But here we have the hoppers that pick up the items from the water flow. These feed over here to this dropper, which we can't click from this side. But they feed into this line of droppers, which is right here, which feeds straight upwards, and this is just a basic item elevator. So what it does is it goes into a comparator. If there's an item in the dropper, that comparator will send out a signal, which we just saw flash right there, which will send a pulse up this torch, which connects to yet another torch, which is right up here, which feeds back into the line of droppers, pulsing that item upwards to our storage chest. And this right here, this redstone dust and repeater and redstone dust on this side, just serves to lock this hopper for just a moment so that the redstone signal can transfer and that this doesn't get jammed with too many items. So that will lock the hopper and limit how many items can be put into the dropper at a time. This redstone over here is completely unrelated. It goes on top of the same hopper as our item elevators. However, this is right underneath the floor, and our pressure plates are right above here. So this is the redstone underneath the pressure plates, which goes into this very basic T flip-flop, which is composed of 3 droppers and a hopper. Now this T flip-flop will shift this piece of cobblestone here between these 2 droppers. So as that cobblestone shifts between those 2 droppers, this comparator will either have an output or it won't have an output. And that output goes into this repeater, which then powers all of our... There we go. This extra cobblestone is here to prevent accidentally washing away our redstone. However, I don't believe we're going to accidentally do that right now, so let me just remove this so that you guys can see what's going on. If I broke that block, I'd probably accidentally wash it away, though. So this here is our retractable floor. It's nothing too fancy, it's just pistons and repeaters. If you look at all of these repeaters, you can see that they're on a 2-tick delay. The reason for that is this repeater right here. So I want all of my pistons in the floor to trigger simultaneously. This just pulls its signal from the T flip-flop over here connected to the pressure plates. And a T flip-flop just takes a single pulse, like a button press or a pressure plate press, and converts it into the same output that you would get from using a lever. So it will turn something always on or turn it always off and alternate between the two. That signal is brought past all of these repeaters powering this bank of pistons on this side, and then it is also sent all the way around to power the bank of pistons on this side through these repeaters. So that 2-tick delay over here, that is so that these pistons on this side have the same delay as the pistons on this side, and they all trigger at the same time instead of half of the floor going up and then the other half of the floor going up. So that's the item elevator and the platform. That's pretty much all of the redstone for the tree farm. It's pretty simple. It was never meant to be too complex. It was just meant to be kind of handy and nifty. So it was minor automation to make my life a little bit easier without actually removing part of the enjoyment from the game, which is going and gathering some resources when you need them. So while it does help me automate the collection of the saplings, chopping down the wood and growing the trees is still something I have to do manually. Come on, Rar, why are you getting all wet? So that's the redstone, that's the functionality, that's the reason for the size, the height, and the redstone there. So next up, we're going to discuss why the design choices, why the other stuff for the build. So let's begin. So to understand the architecture design choices for the build, you kind of have to understand my mindset. And my mindset was, I wanted the functionality of the tree farm, but I didn't want to have just another rectangular building. Now, I feel like my building skill has improved since building this tree farm, and if I had it to do again, I wouldn't have it even look remotely close to what it looks like right now. With that said, I'm proud of what I accomplished at the time with the abilities and patience I had available. So, for starters, instead of just making flat rectangular boxes for our tree chambers in there, I chose to use glass to add a splash of color and detail. They're still flat, but they have depth to them in the fact that we can see through them and we can see the other parts of the building through them. So by having it be glass, we were able to keep the surface flat, which we needed to do for the sapling collection, but still have that feel of extra depth in the distance. The pixel art design, there are 2 different pixel art pictures here. The front window, which is mirrored on the other side, and also mirrored on the back, and then the side window, which we'll go over here and take a look at as well. These were both made by me on a creative test world, and then I took screenshots and just reassembled them in the survival world here. I tried to do these with stained clay too. So on that creative test world, I have a stained glass window and then a stained clay window of the same exact pattern. I liked the stained clay to an extent, but not enough to make the entire wall just a stained clay mural. It looked like crayons. So instead, I did the central part glass, which I think looks really good, and then I did the trim with the stained clay just to brighten it up a little bit more, make it feel solid and a little bit structural. So that's why I have the stained glass there. As far as the detail work with the stone and the cyan stained clay right there, and the windows and the tiered roof tower central area going up in the front here, that was just my attempt to change the shape as far from a rectangle as I could without going too overboard. Too overboard. Um, so I I built this fairly early into my time on the world here, and stone was probably fairly limited at the time. Had I had more stone, I most likely would have added a lot more detail and stonework to this, but I focused mainly on the center part here. I additionally went back and added these buttresses on the side just to get rid of the corners being so rectangular. Uh, Much later into the future, I went and added these details along the entire edge of the wall with the small buttresses here. And that's because I got told my tree farm looked like a spaceship. And I didn't much like my tree farm being called a spaceship, so I tried to just add a few more details that would sort of blur the spaceship look to it. It's still there a little bit, but I feel like I got rid of at least a bit more of the spaceship feel by adding the wood into the sides here. So with the wood, it doesn't feel so technological. Who uses logs to build a spaceship, right? So with the front tower here in the middle, what I did was I used the cyan stained clay there so that when we look at it from a slight angle, it looks like there's a bit of a shadow there. I don't use shaders, so I don't get shadow effects or anything like that. But from a distance, the cyan stained clay next to the stone brick on the sides there, not looking directly at it from the side, but looking at it from the front, gives sort of a shadowy feel since they are slightly darker than the stone brick there. The windows and all of these rooms up here are all fake. There are torches hidden behind the windows or underneath them to make a glow effect at night. However, there is no access to that top area. The very top area is actually just part of the main chamber there. This small room in the front does have access though, if I could figure out how to get up my staircase. So this is the small room at the front. I originally planned a little office area here, and as you can see, it's been about 7 months since I built this, and I never got around to doing the interior. So I just have my bed up here. I have a nice view of the mountain through the window over here, and now there's a castle in that view too. That was not there originally, but it's pretty nice. And then there's an overlook over the tree farm, so if you were working in the office, you could look down at the employees chopping trees or whatever. Use your imagination. But me with interiors, I never got around to doing the interior flat. So instead, we just have the functionality, which down here we have our storage for saplings. You can put those spruce saplings away. Our bone meal, which we're almost out of. Our apples, because dark oak trees drop apples. And we keep an axe of sacrifice here to sacrifice the trees in the tree cathedral. An ender chest, which is always handy in every single one of your builds. And over here we have the 3 wood types. So spruce wood, dark oak wood, and jungle wood. The 3 wood types that we grow in this tree farm. Downstairs is that maintenance room we went into, which is nothing too special, where all of our redstone is accessible. It's always good to have access to your redstone just in case something goes wrong, and I assure you plenty went wrong. On the inside, we have a lot more stone. This, at the time, was a ton of stone for me. Now my builds can use this much stone in a fraction of the amount of work that we get done with it. So stone is a little bit easier for me to gather now. It was not so at the time this was built, so this was a big deal for me. I wanted to have columns in the middle of this. I wanted to have 6 columns, but the front was too difficult to get a column into. The back, we sort of did a column halfway up, and in the middle we did the full columns here that go all the way to the ceiling. And in the ceiling you can see, even though we never actually have a reason to look up there, if we choose to look up there, we have the dark oak wood beams going across the ceiling as support beams. There are even torches, which we might catch a very little glimpse of. There you go, you can catch a very little glimpse of the torches at the very top there that provide light so that the ceiling glows even when it's nighttime. Next up, if I have dirt, well, I don't have dirt, so I guess I'll use cobblestone. We have this little ridge. I'm not sure what you would call it. Trim, molding, border that goes around like the halfway point, and it was just far too tall of an area to have no detail in the middle. So I went up a little bit and we just added this detail of trim around the edge. Now you can see there's carpets here. These have lights in them so that nothing spawns. And we just use the carpet to cover that up. Why, might you ask? Well, because when you're chopping down the trees, this is a window and you can see down onto this area. So I wanted it to look good even if you were just looking at it while chopping down trees through some leaves. We have the hint of green here, the accent color. It is also at the very tip of the pillar, and that's just to incorporate in an accent color into the build, and green is my favorite color, so I chose green. It's also a tree farm, so green makes a little bit of sense. The top is just a A-frame roof, and there are stairs used on the outside so that mobs won't spawn. I believe on the inside though these are actually full brick blocks, so the stairs are just placed on top of those. And there are the only windows that we can actually see out of from the front of the building there. And these ones apparently don't have torches. I was under the impression that I did have torches, but perhaps we're using the torches that are on top of these beams to light up those windows. In the wall here, there's just a bit of detail work, which is, because it is stone on stone, it is actually fairly hard to notice, but it's there just in case you do notice it. And we do the same thing on the back side there. And as well, we have a big diamond window on the back side, and that is instead of having the tiered part that we have in the front. So that's pretty much the interior. We tried to do arches in all of the windows. And this is something that I would have done on the outside of the building had I thought of it before and had the stone to do so. But this is actually glass on the other side of these arches and then stone on this side. So it's a double use of materials to serve as a singular wall, which was an incredible amount of resources for me at the time of this build. And that was fall damage. It's okay, I didn't want my ankles anyways. They weren't very important. So that's the interior. I did the best I could. I feel like I could do a lot better now. All this is just stone trim and little arches just to give it a more structural feel than having glass alone would give it. And this is also just carpet down here, which has jack-o'-lanterns hidden underneath it to light up the ground, so that we don't need torches down here. I'm not a big fan of using torches, so most of my lighting is hidden lighting. The back here, this was all just flat at one point in time, but then we transitioned it into a sky bridge, which connects to the back tree farm over here. You can see there's a road that goes underneath the back tree farm, and that is our sky bridge going across there. Again, using the green accent color and green glass. There's more green when you look at this from the outside because this is the bottom of our pixel art picture, which is supposed to be grass, and then we use the cyan stained clay to transition that into a more structural building material, which is the stone brick. If we come around the front here, I do not believe this is done in the back. It is only done in the front. Let me get my noms on. Num doo num num. Nom nom. We come around the front here, you can see that there are peaks at the top of these, that was just because, again, it was too rectangular. I needed to do something to get away from the flat edges. So I just did small peaks there, and you can see even in the middle, we come out a block and connect that peak so that it looks like it's actually attached. Without having to bring it all the way down, we use a stair to transition that back into the flat wall. So I think that's pretty much everything for this aspect of the tree farm. We do have the back tree farm, which is for all the 1x1 saplings, the birch, the regular oak, and the acacia trees, the ones that can't be grown as a 2x2. And I'll get into that probably in a part 2 since this video is already fairly long. So I think I'm going to say that's all for right now. Be sure to check out my Twitch. I am a Twitch streamer. My Twitch is just twitch.tv/Slinned. You can also follow me on the Twitterverse. That's just twitter.com/Slinned. And I guess thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned a bit about my tree farm here. I hope if you have any questions, you'll leave me a comment, or any comments, you'll just comment down below. And I'll catch you guys next time with another video. Probably part 2 of the tree farm with the back part over there. So thanks for watching. Have a great day, and I'll catch you later. Good night, world.